boomerangs, bombs, dungeons, magic swords, puzzles, and green tunics. Welcome to The Legend of Zelda. After Nintendo had players around the world placing the Japanese 8-bit home entertainment system next to their VHS and cassette players in the mid to late 1980s, a new decade began, and with it, a new era in video games. Nintendo's next-gen contribution to the American market was the Super Nintendo in 1991. The system launched Nintendo's legacy of reinventing their franchises for a new generation, a technological leap that still captivates our imaginations today. The advanced system meant a new free-roaming kingdom of possibilities, and an updated continuation of Link's adventure was at the forefront of every Nintendo fan's mind. 1 year later, in 1992, the gallant sprite set out to destroy all 16 bits of evil in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. 4 years after the side-scrolling Zelda 2, Nintendo returned the series to an overhead perspective, one that added exquisite detail and a bright polish to the original adventure. The gameplay also seemed gleefully familiar, as you explored the overworld of Hyrule, slashing your way through each gridlocked environment. Your health meter was once again a row of hearts that could now be expanded by finding quarter pieces across the world map. Combining 4 of these would give you another vessel of life, enticing players to explore every nook and cranny in every area to raise their defense. The sequel once again pitted our trusted hero Link against the evil Ganon. Just when you thought you had caught up to him and Zelda was within your grasp, you learned that your eternal nemesis had been sealed away in an alternate dimension known as the Sacred Realm. This parallel universe mirrored Hyrule, but Ganon's evil powers had turned it into a horrible place. Link had to travel back and forth between these two worlds, making the game twice as big as expected, and introducing numerous realm-crossing brain teasers. This mission structure was so successful, it became a major part in several Zelda sequels and other Nintendo franchise releases to follow. Link apparently used his time away from consoles to work out a little bit, because he was much more flexible in the third installment. He could move diagonally, which doubled the directional possibilities, and he could pick up items for moving and throwing. When he was on his guard, he now had the "how did I ever survive without that" ability to attack sideways. Instead of only thrusting his sword forward, Link could stand up against multiple enemies with a move that evolved into a mainstay for future games. A Link to the Past also introduced new items, as fans had come to expect. These included the hook shot for grappling, Pegasus boots for dashing, and the Master Sword, the beloved blade of power that would become the Little Green Warrior's Excalibur. One innovation that added a new level to dungeon exploring, literally, was the addition of an upstairs or downstairs to most of the castles and underground interiors. Link could travel up and down each floor, often finding himself on the same screen twice as he took the high or low road back and forth. He would even fall through floors unexpectedly. This feature not only returned in numerous overhead sequels, but it was an interesting development that would one day become a full 3D experience on the N64. After scaring a few loyal followers with Zelda 2, A Link to the Past was everything they dreamed a true Zelda sequel could be, and more. The bird's eye view returned, letting you view each room, town, forest, and enemy battle in its entirety. The combat was smoother, the environments were bigger, the graphics were prettier, and an arsenal of new items made finding each weapon a triumphant achievement. Needless to say, the game was a smash hit. Adored by fans and critics, A Link to the Past held Nintendo Power's #1 spot on the top games list for over 5 consecutive years. Before Nintendo set to outdo themselves again, they moved the series to their first handheld device, the black and white Game Boy. It was not the first RPG to appear on the Pocket system, but it did give the developers license to move the series into unexpected directions, in The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. While sailing back to Hyrule after training abroad, Link was caught in a storm and shipwrecked on Koholint Island. The only way our hero could return home was by snapping the Windfish out of his never-ending slumber. Link's Awakening was the first Zelda game to be set outside of Hyrule, and the main Triforce storyline. Princess Zelda was only mentioned at the beginning, and subsequently stepped out of the spotlight as your primary objective. The on-the-go adventure was the first of the top-view games to feature jumping, a talent Link's cousin Mario had been perfecting for 12 years. This tossed platforming elements into the growing gameplay modes, and added another ability that would become vital when the camera eventually dropped down into the third dimension 5 years later. Link's Awakening was also the first in the franchise that allowed you to assign both buttons to different items, and neither had to be your sword. This opened up new puzzle possibilities like having to dash with the Pegasus boots and jump with Rock's feather. Side quests weren't something that Link hadn't seen before, as there was always much more to do in each Zelda game than you were required to, but the Game Boy exclusive introduced the first trading sequence. This involved meeting several NPCs and traveling to multiple scattered locations to unlock a bonus item, and it continued to beckon true adventurers, itching to find all there was to find on each map in the years and games to follow. Link's Awakening also had an unexpected comedic edge by being surprisingly self-aware. Characters would inform you how to save your game, and then explain that they had no idea what that meant. One character you met introduced himself, and then told you he'd be lost in the forest later on and asked you to keep an eye out for him. To go along with its goofball humor, the Game Boy release featured an uncanny amount of Mario character cameos. From Goombas to Chain Chomps to a Yoshi doll or a picture of Princess Peach, the fourth Zelda title was littered with famous Nintendo faces. And while some fans were shaken by the absence of color in the Zelda universe, the monochrome original returned in a DX version for the Game Boy Color in 1998. Like the console quest before it, Link's Awakening not only introduced new traveling tools that would become indispensable, it inspired future handheld ventures, like the dual cartridge Oracle of Seasons and Ages and the Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance. It was also the first time Nintendo goers could take Link on the road thanks to the Game Boy's remarkable battery life. Considering how much there was to collect and conquer in each Zelda title, it made it that much more tempting to play when the device was tucked away in your backpack, front pocket, or custom carrying case. We're nearing our halfway point in our journey through the history of Hyrule. Keep your battle camera locked onto Part 3 of our Legend of Zelda Retrospective, as we explore Link's trek into the third dimension on the Nintendo 64. It was there that he starred in what many consider to be the best in the series, and one of the finest video games ever made, the Ocarina of Time, as well as its controversial time-traveling follow-up, Majora's Mask.